So the task at hand is using .NET Core MVC to build a multi-page application. So far, we've just built a single-page application, and now we're going to be creating a multi-page. And so, the simple thing is kind of solving two different problems, two different pages that kind of solve two different problems. And of course, C# web, you can scroll down and select this template. But since it's under my recents, I'm just going to call this multi-page demo for my solution. Hey, Jack, let me go ahead and share my screen. And for the project name, I'll just call it my site. This is going in my source directory repos under my user profile. Defaults are fine. I'm going to uncheck this HTTPS because I've only seen that cause problems. Not that we don't need to solve those problems, but for now we'll keep it simple. And in Solution Explorer, now we're a little bit more familiar than before of these different sections. Under shared, we have this underscored layout that links us to some Bootstrap style sheet and looks like a little Bootstrap nav bar. And so I can take a look at that nav tag and probably take that out. And I've got kind of a main container where this render body, or where you put kind of the views that will use this layout. So our views use this layout. And then we've got a footer kind of down here with our links to our JavaScript. And so our first link on our nav bar, if we kind of dig into this, our first link is our brand that says my site. If we just launch this up, we can look at it as we inspect the code a little bit. But here's our first link that says my site. Our second link is the same. It is taking you to the same place. So this my site brand, which is takes you to the same location, home index. Here's another link that has the home privacy action. And so if you kind of look at the home controller, we can see two methods that were being used here. One is this privacy method, and one is this index method, and neither of them are doing much. You can see this has 0 references dealing with errors. We can delete that. And here's something about a logger. I think we're okay to delete that as well. I'm going to delete this privacy, and therefore I'm going to delete hot reload changes. This hot reload is always I think I enabled it on save, so I'm going to uncheck that so I quit getting those error messages about hot reloading. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into my view imports very quickly, my layout, and then I'm just going to delete this link to privacy because I just deleted that. Don't need that link. So again, kind of booting this up and just kind of looking at it out of the box, we should get a home page, and that home page should load with basically links to the home page. And there it is. So both my site and home take you nowhere, basically take you to the home page. And what's underneath, in between this main content section, right, basically from this corner to that corner, this is the view. So if I were to go to my view under home index, again, I can delete privacy, that's no longer a thing. And if I look at my index CSHTML, this is where I get what's in the main section of that body, which is just, a welcome H1 and a paragraph with a link in it. Okay. So that's a general layout and just getting familiar with the files that are in that template. Now, what I want to do is I want to make a second page and really a third page. So to do that, we got to think about, well, what are these pages going to be? And these are I'm just going to make them very simple problems to solve. Like, I'll just have one with like addition and another one with subtraction or multiplication or whatever. So the actual problem is not going to be a complex problem, but we'll have multiple pages that solve different problems. And that's really the experience that we're going for. So I'm going to add a controller. I'm going to start by adding a new controller. And I'm just going to call this the addition controller. And here it has our default action, right? Our default method. And to test this, just to get, we'll just put view bag dot message equals addition page. So that's cool, right? So I'm actually not going to build a model first. I'm just going to have a controller. That controller is going to send a message to the view. I'll receive that message in the view and display the message. That's all I'm going to do at first. So now that I have the addition controller in my view, I need a new folder here. Again, this is a requirement because we have a home controller. We have a folder called home inside of view. So I'm going to make a new folder here. So I'm going to add my folder, and this is going to be addition. Right, so again, the convention is following that name, same name here. Inside of the addition folder, I'm going to add a view, razor view empty, and index view. So here, now this is just a comment, right? So obviously the green is a comment. I'm going to delete the comment. We saw view bag dot title equals, and I'll say addition page, something like that. And I'll say H1 addition page, and maybe in our H2 I'll put my little at view bag dot, I think we called it message, right? View bag dot message sends it to the view. It is this view. It should say addition page and the message. So create the controller, create the view, display the message. Last but not least, we need to create the link, right? So our link is back in our layout. And I'm going to follow the convention of nav link, a bootstrap nav link, text dark. ASP areas, we're going to talk about these. These are basically ways to kind of make different areas of the site behind permissions. So as we get into authentication and authorization, you can create different areas that will help us with that. ASP controller will be addition controller, and the ASP action is also index. And it'll just say addition. So now we have our link in the nav bar that links us to the right controller and the right action that sends us to the view. And let's refresh. Let's save. I guess that's the benefit of hot reload, is I don't have to close it all down and save it and relaunch it. But I turned off hot reload, so let's go through that process. Boot it up. Remember, I got it on Firefox. Now there is my addition controller. Looking in the lower left-hand corner, you could see the route that it's taking me to is /addition. That looks good. And here's my my title, and then here's my view bag message. All right, so I can go home, and now I can go to addition. So that's fairly straightforward, and let's finish this off by creating a model and solving a problem. So I don't need this view bag message. I just wanted to test that. I will create a form. The method is a post, and the ASP action. So back in my addition controller, this method handles our GET request. And we're going to make another method to handle our post request called index. And it will return a view, and that should make that happy. And I need to flush this out just a little bit more. So now we get to create our model, and then what we'll do is we'll pass that type into the parameters of this method so that it stops erroring out. So I'll come into here and models, and this is a C# class to solve some simple problem. In this case, the problem is very simple. It's just addition. And I'm going to have number 1, number 2, and result. Or sum. How about sum? And this is a constructor that it's suggesting. I'll just make a method called public void calculate sum, where we set sum equal to number 1 plus number 2. So when you call calculate sum, it'll put the value in this property. I do want to point out just kind of briefly, yesterday we took the result of the math and we put it in view bag. We did not create a property to store the result of the math. And there's reasons why you wouldn't do this. The reason why is this concept of stale data. Here's a general theory. If you have number 1 is 1, number 2 is 1, therefore sum can be calculated when you call calculate sum. Obviously, sum becomes 2. But then if somehow number 1 changes to 5, you have number 1 is 5, you have number 2 is still 1, and unless you rerun this calculate sum method, sum still equals 2, right? So there are these scenarios where you can have stale data if you don't rerun the method to calculate sum. If you change one of the numbers, then sum is at risk of holding stale data. So there's reasons why you might not do that, but regardless, I'm gonna put that in there. And when you click the button, you're gonna call this method and you'll recalculate based on the current values. So that's the theory why you might not do this, but we'll be able to avoid it. We'll avoid that problem. Okay, so now we have a class, a C# class called addition, and back in our addition controller, we can take in an addition type. Now, it's not being recognized because we don't have a using statement. If I click on this, it does recognize that you need to add a using statement up at the top. And so by clicking on that, it added this using my site models, my site being the project name, models being the folder name. Okay, so now we'll just call this addition A1. So we're accepting a parameter, and the data coming in is A1. So A1 should have values for number 1. It should have values for number 2, and it should have a sum that is configured when we call the method. So again, kind of going back to here, we need to call calculate sum. Calculate sum will in fact put data inside of this variable. And so back here on my controller, the first thing I'll do is I'll say a1.calculateSum. So this puts a value into some property. And when I say put a value, it calls the set block, right? It calls the set block of the sum property is another way of saying that. It's also convention when you accept A1 to go ahead and pass A1 back to the view so that the view can get all the current values of that object, right? That the view will then use that object. Back in my view, yes, Tony.
What is the thing you, like that auto added at the very top?
Yeah, the using statement. It adding using MySite.models so that this data type is recognized. Okay. Without that using statement on line 2, line 16 would error out because it's an unrecognized type. Good question. Now, what I want to do back here is I want to add in a strictly typed view, which is at model, app model, and this is going to do my site models addition model. Okay, so you're not very happy, and here's why. I want to go into my, at this point, I want to go into my views and my view imports. Okay, it is using my site.models. Okay, good. I want to make sure that that was there. That is there. So now back in my view, I want to say app model. There we go. App model addition. That's the type for our class. Okay, so now our view is a strongly typed view. And we can start coding our form. Of course, our form is just going to have labels and text boxes and a button and a place to show the answer. And so just kind of do some of that. Here we get some help with our Bootstrap class names. Form label. And here's our helper tag, ASP4, and this is number 1. Now, it is kind of interesting that we don't have to specify the actual type attribute of our input tag because, and we'll get into it, but it basically resolves to a good type. It resolves to a text box. But if we say number 1, and it is a self-closing tag, and we'll put the class of form control. So that's a Bootstrap class, and we want this on its own line, so we'll put this inside of a div. Hold down Control and hit KF to kind of format all this. And we'll do the same thing for number 2. So copy that div, paste number 2, number 2. We need a third one for the sum. Now the sum should load when the page loads. It should load it as 0, but we'll get there. Yes, sir, Connor?
A couple things. One, on that number 2, you need to change what it's actually doing.
It needs to say number 2. Additionally, this doesn't need This needs to be read-only.
Is it okay to have multiple of the same kind? Like, right now we have two index.csh.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, they're in different folders, right? If they were in the same folder, obviously that would be a conflicting name. But at this point, we have to do it this way because this is the convention. We'll learn how to make different names and all this kind of stuff, but
And the layout with the navbar kind of recognizes each individual.
yeah. Yeah, because they're on different controllers, right? So this home controller has an index method, but it belongs to home controller. Addition controller has an index, but it belongs. They're just in different folders, in different namespaces, and yeah, it's probably a little bit of getting used to it. Okay, back to our view. So here, number 1, number 2, there's a sum. Of course, we need a button type of submit, and it kind of was going to help me out here. Div button type of submit. Now, the submit button is going to submit the form, which is going to post us to an index method. Of the addition controller. So it should take us here, run this method, and return this. So I'm going to put a breakpoint in here, just as I'm running this for the first time. And in fact, I'll put a breakpoint right here. So when the page is loading, it'll hit my breakpoint. And when I click the submit button, it'll hit my breakpoint. So let's go ahead and start with debugging. And let's see what mistakes I've made. Okay, so it's starting to load. As I click on addition, notice I hit my breakpoint, which is what I would expect. Now I'm just going to hit continue because I don't really need to look at anything here. So I continue on to the addition page. Number 1 will be 5. Number 2 will be 5. Let's click add. Okay, I hit my post method. This is good. I always like to inspect. You could just hover your variables here. Number 1 is 5. Number 2 is 5. That's looking good. I can step into calculate sum. I can see number 1 is 5. Number 2 is 5. Sum is currently 0. So this is exactly what I would expect. If I now hover sum, after I execute line 11, sum is now 10. This is all looking good. And if I hit continue, I would expect at this point this to show my sum. It doesn't. Let me troubleshoot a little more. I believe I know what I did. If I go back to my view, let me click stop. Okay, I did not ASP4 sum. Oh, thank you. So here, that's why it's the value that is being displayed. That's why we put the end result inside of ViewBag, because I can get ViewBag displayed in this value. But I do not believe if I just do value of sum, that's just going to be a string value. Let's see. Okay, here it is. So what we do, this is something here, quotes at model dot sum. There we go. And believe this is going to be what we're looking for. Now, okay, object reference not set to. We don't have a sum when the page loads. So what's happening here is we're trying to display a sum that has not been calculated yet. So what I can do back on the addition controller, I was trying to solve this a different way, but you can kind of see some of the problems. is I need to be able to set the sum when the page is loading to 0. So here's what we'll do. We'll go ahead and instantiate our addition called addition equals new addition, and that will set addition dot sum equal to 0. And then I'll return addition to my view. And go. Okay, so now we've got there we go. Okay, so kind of solved it a little bit of a different way using the property to store the value as opposed to ViewBag. You know, I just wanted to show another way because I believe, you know, you'll see different potential solutions. Okay, so there's our addition page. Now moving on to our subtraction page that we've solved addition. This should be a fairly smooth process for subtraction. So again, I like to kind of just piece at a time, close, 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 close all tabs. Solution Explorer. Let's create a subtraction, add controller. Subtraction controller. This is an HTTP GET. And let's create a folder called subtraction. Add a folder. Subtraction. Inside of subtraction, we'll add a view called index CSHTML. And I'll set the ViewBag title to subtraction and an H1 that says subtraction page. Let's go back into my layout and create a link. It's under shared layout. And here's another LI in my nav bar. Copy that LI, paste it. The controller just is now subtraction, and the text is subtraction. Thank you. So there's subtraction, subtraction. Boot it up. Click the link. The view with index was not found. Now I am not subtraction. I must have had a typo. I forgot my C there. Rename subtraction.
I apologize. You had it right the first time, though.
I had it wrong both times. So because I had a typo in my folder name, it couldn't find the view. Views subtraction index. So let's rename this one more time. And let's make sure that I've got it spelt right here. Looks good. So close it down. There it goes. Maybe it wasn't saved, but we're now to the subtraction page, and literally same process here for the addition, except for we're literally changing one symbol for subtraction. But to go through it real quick, we can do that. So now that we have an index, I'm going to go to my view for addition and copy my form into my subtraction page, And I don't have a model, but let's presume I'll have a number 1, a number 2, and we'll call this something other than sum. Difference, thank you. And this will be a subtract button. And so let's go ahead and create our subtraction model. Add a class. And because I'm just wanting to keep it number 1, number 2, and difference, this wants to bring in this is a constructor, not interested on this, but I will say public void calculate difference. Difference is that minus that. And so now my model is subtraction, number 1, number 2, app model difference. Okay. And so in my controller, just like I did before, I'll say subtraction, new subtraction, subtraction dot difference equals 0, so that I can review that. I can send that back to the view, so the view can use the difference of 0 when the page is loading. Makes sense. So that we put the difference right here when the page is loading. Let's go ahead and do a post. HTTP post public iAction results. Subtraction, calculate difference. Looking good. And so a lot of copy and paste, so I flew through that really quick just because we did the same thing on addition. Don't doubt that I made a typo somewhere, but maybe not. Okay, so 2 different problems, 2 different pages, Bootstrap navbar, MVC, problem solved. I'll put that out on YouTube for you guys if I went too fast or if you want to just look at it.